You succeed in life not by going, I did awesome in year 12, I did awesome at uni. It's actually about how do you survive life? How do you make sense of the world? How do you learn about the world? And if you take off all of those structures, then you're actually trying to learn about the world. And the more you can learn about the world, the better. Welcome to Journey the Path, conversations about what life means and all the choices and feelings in between. I'm Daniel May. Today, my co-host Cade Embery and I talk about a wider view of schooling, in particular, schooling our children.
So if we were to take our kids out of school and do a trip for, I don't know, a month or something, we're going to go for a 4-week road trip, I wouldn't think twice about taking my kids out of school. Now, my kids are in primary school at the moment and they're doing really well. The report comes back and says that they're more advanced than most of the class. And I think that probably is a good sign, because I was a bit confused actually when my daughter brought her report card home. Oh no, so it was emailed to us. They don't bring a report card home anymore, but it was emailed to us earlier this week, and it said, that she's excelling. She's doing really well. She's like a year and a half ahead of, what she should be, or what the median is or whatever. Me and my wife are like ragging on her, going, you're going to have to work harder. You're going to have to do better, trying to do the stereotypical Asian parent thing. Just like, because I know when I brought my report sheet back when it was on paper, it always said the same thing. Like it always was like, Cade's doing very well in these areas. He could improve by paying more attention. He could improve by being a better listener. Like it was always, he's doing good. But even back then, I'm pretty sure most of the teachers, and I know a lot of teachers now, just copy and paste the comments from, one report to the other. I think I was speaking to a teacher the other day who they have 3 or 4 different kind of comments that they copy and paste and then do the insert name here. Daniel is a good student. Daniel is an average student. Daniel is a terrible student, that kind of thing, and just copy and paste and apply it. And I remember bringing home a report card and my parents were like, we don't actually care about the grades. We only care about the comments, which I thought was hilarious because the comments usually just copied and pasted. And I remember one year my woodworking teacher wrote, Cade is a great student. She really applies herself and she's fantastic at, the details and the small details, whatever. And I came back and showed that to my dad and was like, see, I told you the comments are useless. This guy doesn't even know who I am. And this was a teacher who, I was on a first name basis with in the class and had a pretty good rapport with. I was quite surprised by my daughter's one because it came back and there was nothing bad. And I was like, what's going on? They're not inspiring or pushing my daughter to strive harder. They're just basically going, yeah, she's doing good. That's all good. And it was quite interesting. I don't know if that's the new policy of the Department of Education to do that, or if she's actually just, teacher doesn't have anything bad to say about her. But it did raise the question about, if we were to take our kids out for a month and go for a trip, I mean, I wouldn't be concerned at all as a parent, but we were chatting the other night, what are the implications? What can the school do about it?
Yeah. I think about the Simpsons with the Chuck E. Cheese parody, you're the birthday boy or girl. Cade is doing really well. He or she, or maybe they. It's a choose your own adventure. I did hear a teacher slip in at some point about the software. So I'm wondering whether, there is some software that they use for all the report writing and everything like that. And I know that some teachers do the something to improve on. So I normally look at how Samuel is tracking at an overview level and then look at the detail of the comments, because they can be quite helpful. And there's also some teachers that are just out of it. Like when you talk to them in the parent-teacher situation, they actually they're not so engaged, or they just seem to really miss the mark compared to other teachers. So yeah, it's quite an interesting sort of experience. So Samuel is, I guess, like Hunter, doing very well. So there's the objective fact of how your kid is going and how your kid would handle going away and so on. And having gone through this just a bit, ahead of where you are, it's been interesting. So there's the whole school situation to think about. There's a few levels that we found. So there's how the kid is going, which in our case is fine. Then there's how the school views this. And this has actually been the subject of newspaper articles that we would track. There are some schools that feel like this should not be tolerated, taking kids out early for holidays. And some schools actually have the policy, and it's not an education department policy, it's more of what they believe. Outside stuff is very educational. Hunter's going to learn a lot by going places and doing stuff. We also have what it seems to be an attendance crisis, quote unquote, in Australian schools. This is a thing. And I think I actually sent you an article related to this morning. So this has been going on for a number of years. How do we fix it? Through to the punitive measures which schools can apply in our state. So things like the wagging of the finger, that's the first one. And some parents will be aghast at that. Sounds like you'll be like, yeah, whatever, good old Cade. But then there's the escalation to the Department of Education, a school attendance officer.
They get a uniform and a badge? The school attendance
I
officer?
don't know. It's not an Asian country. Asian countries love the badge and the uniform. But here, probably not. But a title, Hunter, you could be a school attendance officer when you grow up, or school attendance robot. So the next stage from that is the fine. Okay, now I've got Kate's attention. The fine, ka-ching. So I guess people don't want to escalate it to that point. What we did was you try to ascertain where the school is at, where his teachers are at. So we gave lots of notice that this is the sort of thing we wanted to do, just to feel out. So that looks okay. Great. And then we tried to show that we're very engaged parents, that we're keeping up with things, that the reality of the situation is Samuel is fine. And then we did while we're away, we can keep a blog and his classmates can see what he's doing and ask questions. We did that one year.
You went over and above with the alibi.
Because we want the thing to work. And I think we've put enough distance from that time so that it's okay. I think the blog is somewhere. So it's Samuel talking to his classmates, things like that. So just to stack it, because it gets harder in high school, and particularly in the last couple of years with VCE stuff, they really crack down on that. So yeah, there's that school politics stuff that's difficult to navigate, unless you want to go homeschooling all time. So I know a family of 8 with a father who's an accomplished musician, performer, professor, and they're in their van, bus situation, towing them around Australia. And they thought that would be really good for them. They've been homeschooled anyway, so they'll be learning all sorts of stuff. And the dad and the mum felt like they've lived pretty much most of their time on this compound in Diamond Creek, and it would be good to actually see Australia. I don't know how that's going. I caught up with him at various times, and that was, what they were doing. So yeah, just I guess it's just giving you a preview of our experience and just, I guess, a heads up on what the school could be. It sounds like you've got a good school. The smaller schools are better, but high school potentially may be a bit of a mess.
Yeah, and we're at a government school, and the principal and all the teachers, fantastic. And to be honest, I think I can understand the fines and trying to enforce kids, because we've got a family situation where a relative of mine, about the same age as Hunter, actually, I would be surprised if she's attended school more than once or twice this year, more due to potentially parent neglect, likely parent neglect, rather than they're doing really well and we're going away on holiday or anything like that, which is a sad story. But I can see where, you'd want to apply a bit of pressure to try to, for her sake, have her attend school. Whereas I think it's a bit of a different story here. And I'm fairly sure, as with most things, if we communicate well to the school, I don't think a school would have any problem, with us saying, hey, we're going to go away for a holiday for 4 weeks and then we'll be back. Or, we're going to go away for a few months and can you give us, I think even just that conversation of hey, can you give us some of the curriculum, or can you help us with what you would be normally be doing at school? Can we do that? Having that conversation kind of shows that you're not doing it for the wrong reasons. Almost a totally different story, but it comes to mind when we went to a park probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and I had my daughter on the swing, and we were pushing the swing and we were playing games and, having this great time. And at the park, there was also another girl came over and, obviously was attracted to all the fun and noise that we were having. And she wanted to play as well. So she jumped on the swing and I was pushing my daughter, backwards and forwards. This other girl sat on the swing and, had no one to push her and was just sitting there like, they're having fun and I'm just sitting here. This is like 3 or 4-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And she's like, can you push me? And I was like, well, I'm not really sure. Like these days, it shouldn't be. I saw the mum preparing, I think she was setting up a birthday party. So she was like, doing placemats and balloons all over this picnic table, probably maybe 100 meters away. So I went over to her and was like, hey, your daughter wants to be pushed on the swing. I can see you're busy. Do you mind, like, if I understand if you say no, but like, do you mind if I push her on the swing next to my daughter? And she goes, yeah, of course. The fact that you asked probably means that you're not the kind of guy to be worried about. And I guess that's kind of the thing of like, if, I think if you have that conversation and the communication with the school going, hey, here's what we're thinking, being upfront and clear that we're not just like neglecting our child and not sending them to school. We have, an intention and a plan. I don't think that our school would really care that much about that.
Yeah. I think that was a really wise play on your part. I think the only thing I would have suggested you doing is using AI to construct an app in real time to record consent and put it on a blockchain. But other than that, it was perfect. Okay. I think it also reminded me of The Simpsons. When Bart and Milhouse aren't friends, and then Milhouse is on the seesaw just by himself.
Oh yeah,
kicking up and down.
Milhouse. The other interesting aspect of this as well is always other people's opinions, and the kind of conversation we have all the time where you do something that's out of the ordinary. So let's say, hey, we're going to take our kid out of school for a month and we're going to drive around Australia, or we're going to do a road trip or something. And anytime you say anything, it seems to be especially about amongst family members, there's always people who will be like, oh no, you can't do that because of X, Y, Z. And a lot of that seems to come from like, you can't do that because that's not the way that I did it, or that's not the way that it was done back in my day, or, that's not the done thing. Found it interesting and refreshing the other day because I was talking to a friend of mine who is a teacher, and they're putting together a course that for schools to teach music. So it's like it's a video program for learning how to play different instruments and learning about music, which is really cool. I don't know if you can access it immediately right now, but I think they're doing like their season 2 of that kind of thing. And he was talking about, he actually brought to my attention, there's a school, I think out in Melton, which is entirely digital. So after COVID and lockdown, obviously there was a lot of schools and educational groups did teaching via Zoom. That was for a period. And then when lockdown finished, it was, there's a lot of like people going, oh, thank God that's over. But there was also the realization for a few where, hey, actually, you know what, this kind of worked. Maybe there's something here that provides a different avenue for how we could do education and how we could do school. And he was talking about a school that doesn't actually have on-premises learning. It was quite interesting because I haven't actually heard that, because I know that it's out of the norm, but there's actually a government school out there that's doing it, a fully online campus. And he was also sharing about, I think it's the CEO of Duolingo talking about, I think he was quoted as saying, this is like the future of school with AI. And I think he said, so I didn't actually hear it firsthand, but I think someone asked the question of, does that mean that we don't need teachers and we don't need schools anymore? And I think the response was something like, no, we'll still need people. We'll still need the childcare aspect. We'll still need the people to like facilitate and guide and take care of the kids while they're learning on these things. But I think there does seem to be a greater shift where people are starting to become more open about different things. And I suppose myself, I found that as well. I used to think homeschool was one of those things that was a little bit out of the norm and probably not optimal, but I can definitely see now that there's quite a lot of things that quite a lot of pros to homeschooling that could be much better than, the traditional institutional schooling as well. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you've given me a lot of food for thought. So I've just been processing some of the things you've been saying. I think on the topic of being a good actor, I think it's helpful to be a good actor so your school can see that these aren't a bunch of yahoos that are going to take their daughter out of school for a month and then just ride all the rides at wherever. And she comes back dumber than she was before. But these are people who have a good handle on her learning. I guess the point I always make is if you've got a school that's also a good, helpful actor, as opposed to someone who, for political reasons, doesn't matter how good you are and how a head hunter is, that there's a potential political agenda, right? Which can be pushed, and that's just going to depend on the school. And it sounds like you've got a good school that knows all of you and everything like that. So that's a good thing. It's interesting with the school, the homeschool, remote school type stuff. I've been involved with tertiary institutions that have taught remote bachelor courses for music and music performance, not theory. So that's been interesting. That things that you might consider are actually only possible in person. A lot of things are actually possible. Samuel certainly thrived in the pandemic remote thing. In fact, he naturally got his friends together. So the same friends on the same table, when they'd actually get set tasks, he actually fired up a separate chat where all the friends jumped onto that independently and worked through their problems like a virtual table, right? So he did that. And the good thing was that he had enough of his friends that they would go to the local playground, and you're not allowed to meet, but I guess they all engaged in exercise at the same time at the
Yeah,
playground.
we all did that, didn't we?
So
Until they shut down the playgrounds.
So they got their exercise and some level of getting things done. And it was quite interesting listening to how he'd get most of his work done for the day in, 30 to 60 minutes. And then he had the rest of the day to do interesting things, competed in competitions. I think he was in grade 5 or something, and got into a Melbourne Uni accelerated math thing where they learned about encryption and did simultaneous equations and all sorts of stuff. But, the downside is, in a non-pandemic world, he would have gone there for the weekend doing that. So things were happening. He was going really well. There was a point before the pandemic that he was suffering from anxiety about actually going to school. So he actually wanted to go to school, but there's the anxiety of actually getting in there. And once he was in there, it was okay, but there was that anxiety. We even drove right to school, and he said, I can't do it. And then when he'd get home, he'd be like unhappy with himself, and he'd want to do it and try again, and talking to the schools to help sort of work this out. And it was quite interesting because I said, homeschooling, this kind of thing. And they actually said, we're actually not worried about his academic performance, but we want to make sure his socialization and the social skills are the thing that we're concerned about and want to have. This was at primary school. And it was actually through the vice principal. It was really helpful. One thing about executive at school who used to be PE teachers is they're very they have a bias towards action. They kind of make things happen, like a PE teacher would. Let's make it happen. And so he was great. We had a meeting and Samuel was there, and he said, your attendance is here and it needs to be up here. And I know it's hard and all of this, but I think we can do it. And I want you to know, whenever I'm walking around the playground, I'm just going to check in on you, see how you're going. Might even just be, like a look and that sort of stuff. But I just want you to know that I'm here and we can do this. And that was interesting because I realized the sympathetic, supportive third party who can have a sway over him. That's not just, your parents love you and are working on a solution. But here's someone, I don't know, it seems to shake up the status quo. So that actually helped quite a bit. Now, He's struggling a bit at the moment in high school because he's finding the sham and charade of the political theatre that is high school in Victoria, in his school, possibly other schools, is a bit much to bear because he just wants to actually get on with it. You know, he's in year 10 and he's doing year 10, 11, and 12 subjects. He likes learning. He loves learning, but all the complexity and potential hypocrisy and all sorts of stuff is getting in his way. So he's thinking, what can I do? So I don't know if you're familiar with Virtual School Victoria. It's Virtual School Victoria. It's run by the Education Department, technically Victoria's biggest school. The problem is you have to be a genius that the system can't deal with, or you've got some disadvantage, distance, psychological stuff, eating disorders, all kinds of other stuff that prevent you from attending normal school. And so to do that, I guess we've actually sat and discussed whether a case can be made because of Samuel's autism diagnosis and all kinds of other things. But it's also to give you a heads up, whether if that's ever an option for any of your children, that's sort of understanding the criteria for being able to get into there. I've done a whole lot of analysis on that problem. It helps to have some time to think about it.
Yeah, I've never heard of this before. I just looked it up. I'm looking at it now, and
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Maybe that other school I was talking about is part of.
Yeah, it might be. And I do know that schools in Victoria can have different sorts of programs and philosophies. I'm talking about government schools. So Samuel's at this, I think they used to call them the 21st century schools, vertical learning, meaning you move at the pace that you can move at. So you can accelerate. So it's like normal school, but you can accelerate in subjects. There's a few hidden things they don't quite tell you, like Samuel can't accelerate to the max because it would mean that the school won't get enough funding.
Right. Yeah,
because he would later be a part-time student. We don't get enough money. And my first reaction to him was, congratulations, Samuel. Welcome. You've learned one of the most important lessons about the world.
I was going to say, when you were talking before about how he was frustrated about the song and dance and the theatre and the political dramas, even just within the school, and he's not learning things. And I was going to say, like, he's probably learning the most important things, which is if you're a very pragmatic, practical person and you just want to get the job done, that unfortunately in life, in jobs, in family, in relationships, in everything, it's all of the politics and the bureaucracy that is the part that you have to navigate to get those things done, which is, it's just another thing to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, and he learns to do that as well. So he plays the game, but it really wears down on him because it doesn't make sense. It's just so wasteful. He didn't certainly, that did not really sit well with him in terms of you have to, if you accelerate faster, you're actually going to have to do more subjects that potentially don't count because we need to keep your load at this level to get the funding, things like that. So there's that. And I guess it's helpful for you to understand the options. Sorry, I was talking about the different programs. So you've got some of those schools which follow that 21st century school model. Then you've got the normal schools, but they have this accelerated cohort. They're called SEAL schools. I think it's, selective blah, blah, something. So there's an accelerated cohort that's modeled off University High that's in Parkville, which pioneered this, I think. So lots of schools all over Victoria have these little SEAL programs. I don't know whether they called them that so that they could have that association with the Navy SEALs, which will shoot and kill you if you're a terrorist. So that's another sort of thing. I'm not so sure about that because you've got this normal cohort, of students, but then you've got this little small cohort that's like a class-ish of people who are probably a bit awkward, on the spectrum, smart. And I think there's something about being in the mix of everyone and learning how everyone is going and taking everyone along on the journey. I used to go to a fully selective school at Melbourne High and was actually proud, like, there's 1,200 of us. We're awesome. get stuff done. They gave us the Top Gun talk in year 9 when we all joined. Gentlemen, you are the best of the best. And now looking back, I'm not sure that was great, because you hit uni and you're these type A, highly task-oriented men. It was boys' school. And people would say, hang on, are you from Melbourne High? Purely from the way we would carry ourselves. And I used to think, yeah, that's pretty cool. And that's it's not a bad thing in itself. Some people's head was large, but you just felt like, yeah, I get things done. But you also can look at people and going, the world is like this. If they could be more like us. And most of the world is not like us. Most of the world is people who are struggling. There's also a whole other thing called women. They think differently. They deal with things differently. There's feelings. It's good. So it's learning about those things, right?
Aspect.
Which is why I wouldn't have sent Samuel to the school unless he absolutely wanted that, Sorry, go on.
That you brought up something before about the family that you know who was traveling on a bus around Australia, and you shared something which I know another family as well who did like maybe a 8 or 9 month trip around Australia with their kids in a caravan, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Time flies. So, and when I was asking them about their experience, one of the main things that they shared was something that you shared a bit earlier, which is basically seeing the kids learn and grow and their understanding of the world get larger as they interact with other people from other cultures. There's Indigenous people that they met when they're doing the travels. There's different ways of doing things. There's different opinions. There's different places, and I suppose, it's the same as when you go traveling overseas to a totally different culture to your own. It does broaden your view and it does help you get a bit more understanding of other people's points of view and perspectives. And that in itself, this is purely anecdotal and conjecture on my part, but from what I've seen in my experience is that actually helps you with learning. Like it opens your mind, which probably maybe expands your RAM or your SSD in your hard drive to be able to understand and learn more. So yeah, as you said, it's not just about the academic learning, getting the grades and learning the, dotting the I's and crossing the T's and 2 times 2 equals 4. But it's also that social aspect where the kids get to interact with other people, at school, and then even potentially broadening that to being able to interact with people outside of even the school, meeting people that are older than them, learning how to converse and communicate between them, understand people's perspectives, have empathy for people and all of that, which helps them become more grounded, well-rounded people, hopefully better people just in all kinds of aspects in their lives.
I wouldn't have judged you if you'd said conversate. Then we would have tried to get conversate as a verb in. We're in month 6 of trying to get conversate. No, I don't think so. But we could make it. We could make it. Starting day 1 of the conversate challenge. We're going to see.
Conversate is in the dictionary, apparently.
Is it? Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a guess. It's to engage in conversation, which I suppose is what we've been doing here.
I guess I don't want to verse you. And we're in agreement. That's excellent. So I want to come back to, you talked about the what is learning, the CEO of Duolingo, et cetera, et cetera. Now you were saying, hey, going off the beaten path is powerful for learning. And I think that quite a few people would agree with that, but I actually want to take it more to that further level to go, you can say traveling around is really helpful, but after you're done, we're going to get back to that school curriculum that's like this. It's very structured, and that's the good oil. Found when you got to university, you suddenly realized actually there's a whole world of knowledge out there. And who's to say the stuff I looked at, cool, I'm across it, I'm set. Hang on. There's all kinds of stuff out there. It's a whole wide world. That's sort of interesting thing if we're looking beyond the normal school kind of structure and going, well, actually you succeed in life not by going, I did awesome in year 12, I did awesome at uni. It's actually about how do you survive life? How do you make sense of the world? How do you learn about the world? And if you take off all of those structures, then you're actually trying to learn about the world. And the more you can learn about the world, the better. The challenge is it's a big world out there. And if you're leaving it to people to learn, then we have all the world's knowledge. It's amazing. We have AI to help you learn and structure that. And so if we're going to have people learn at their own speed, and if we're going to have people learn in all kinds of ways, then it means that they're actually going to have to take some responsibility or know how to guide themselves. Or, maybe that's where teachers, or what we call teachers now, are there to help guide them. Samuel knows more about stuff than I do. I do not understand what he does with maths, have not understood that since the start of high school. But what he appreciates from me is to talk about how encryption is used, why it's useful, why pure mathematics is useful, because it gives rise to public key encryption, all the math that we use in computers. It made all of that possible, and understanding how some of these things he's learning actually apply in real life. He really appreciates that. So there's this interesting thing where I get so excited for him, but I also go, there's some responsibility for someone. And I've taken that responsibility on. I don't trust outsourcing it all to school to actually get his head thinking about what he needs to prepare himself. Learning is to prepare yourself for stuff. And that's been a huge amount of stuff, from negotiation, understanding human neuroscience, emotions, feelings, how to win friends and influence people, all of that. So I don't know where school sits with that, and how it should do that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And maybe it's a question we can continue to wrestle with maybe on the next episode of the podcast. But maybe we'll wind this down for now. And thanks for listening. And we will chat again soon.
And if you have children, may their report cards have appropriate pronouns. And I hope that your kids are doing well.